When we're looking at writing modern solo sections, there's a few things we want to consider before we begin to sort of craft these different sections. Um, while this is sort of a technique that's been used, ever since the beginning of big band writing and utilized extensively by Ellington, for a while in the 50s and 60s, a lot of big bands did not use some of these ideas, and they did not make a resurgence until sort of the 80s and 90s. The first and biggest, probably the most important idea, of course, is that we're writing a section that's satisfying for the soloist. Now, in some cases, you might have a specific soloist in mind that you're writing for. In other cases, maybe you are just writing something a little more general for a particular instrument. But we always want to have the soloist in the back of our brain. This at times might mean that we need to spell out simpler harmony. It might mean we need to create a different texture. It might mean that we need to provide some orchestration that helps give some developmental ideas for the soloist. I would make sure that as you begin to sort of craft these sort of modern solo sections, that we have some ideas of things that will be effective, some good general ideas about what might guide the soloist, and maybe then some very specific ideas about who we're writing for and what will be effective for them. Generally, there's some ideas you can consider that are sort of across the board when it comes to effective solo writing. If you're writing for a bass solo, you probably don't want to have the band playing super loud. If you're writing for a trombone, maybe you want to have backgrounds and instruments that are in a different range than the trombone. If you're writing for the piano, maybe that's going to affect how you're going to write backgrounds. So first we want to start with some basic ideas that way. Then, as you sort of move into a little bit more of the sort of more developed ideas, when it comes to some general ideas, what our direction are we moving the solo in? What is the solo coming from? What is the solo going to afterwards? What do we need to know form-wise that's going to help sort of guide what we will write? And then finally, we want to think, very specifically about the soloist. If you're writing for an individual, what types of things are going to make them sound good? What types of things do they enjoy playing over? What types of direction and or energy are they going to need? Maybe this also might apply to how you decide to write harmony. Are you writing a lot of changes with the idea that they're going to outline them in maybe an advanced way or a simple way? Are you going to write no changes with the idea that you're going to free them up and they're just going to be able to play whatever? So these decisions will both guide sort of our orchestration, instrumentation, as well as what we decide to do harmonically, as well and with our sort of direction and rhythm. When you start thinking about harmony, of course, you can sort of approach this from a number of ways, starting from, very, very simple to, of course, more complex. If you go back and watch our brief discussion on reharm, it'll, of course, give you some ideas about how we might take an original set of chord changes versus how we might tweak them versus how we might just go for a full reharm. There are lots of examples of songs where the harmony is just completely removed from a song and somebody solos free over it. Maybe if you've written out something that's very harmonized for the melody section, maybe we want to go down to something that's just much simpler, or maybe it's the original chord changes. This sort of leads us to our next point, which is looking at contrast and what role does the solo provide in the piece as a whole. Is it supposed to be a new section? Is it supposed to be something that sounds different? Is it more of the same? Is it recalling back to some of the ideas that you had during the melody? If you're writing for two solos, it's very conceivable that one solo might be in a dramatically different place than the other solos. Of course, you want to think about whether or not this material is contrasting in an appropriate way. Again, I think if you sort of guide yourself using these three ideas first, number one, is it satisfying for the solo? Number two, what are we doing harmonically? And then number three, are we providing contrast from something? And what is it we're providing contrast from? I think you'll be in a good place to begin sort of crafting what the solo section might look at. Finally, you'll notice that we reference both vamps and pedals a lot. And in many cases, these are very sort of easy solutions for creating little tweaks in the harmony, little tweaks in the form that provide plenty of ways of writing interesting things that aren't time consuming and are also very playable by the band. In some cases, you could write these out without using repeats and just, sort of doing them more sort of through composed. But a lot of times we sort of like to guide these by using repeat signs and then, repeating a 4, 6, 8 bar phrase. Um, a lot of times it can create very interesting ideas. One piece we've listened to in class that uses these great is Vern Sievert's arrangement of You Must Believe in Spring.